It is a phenomenal way to build wealth with not a lot of money down, right? You don't need a lot of money. And for that reason, you just get such high returns of 100% or more after that first year. I just don't know any other investment vehicle, even in real estate or outside of real estate, where you can consistently get 100% plus return without throwing money at something super risky that's essentially gambling.
This is episode number 38 of the Short-Term Rental Success Stories podcast. Are you an investor that's looking to have your home professionally managed? Go to cohostit.com for more information. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Like any exceptional host, we all strive for 5-star reviews, so please go on over to iTunes and let us know what you enjoy, as it really helps support the show. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation, to connect with the community. Hey, what is going on, Host Nation? I'm super excited for this episode because it really hits home for me. For those of you that don't know, I got started in the short-term rental space by house hacking my basement unit, and it was able to essentially cover for my mortgage where I was able to live for free. You can actually go back to some of the earlier episodes where I was talking about getting the space ready during that renovation process when I actually started the podcast. But house hacking for me was really a game changer because for those of you that don't know, about 5 years ago, I really got started on this entrepreneurial journey because I was trying to reach financial independence, financial freedom. When my dad got sick with cancer, I just knew that I needed to be able to find a way out of just trading my time for money. And I tried so many different businesses and tried so many different things like mobile home investing, Forex, Amazon FBA, all these different things, thinking that this was going to be the way out of the rat race. And for nearly 5 years, I just tried and tried again. And I was really at my wit's end. And I honestly felt like, okay, this is it. I'm going to just put everything down and I am going to purchase a house and just kind of, work towards retirement. I got my college degree. I was just going to, try to work for another job. So when we decided to settle down and actually purchase a property, my wife was the one that came up with the idea of saying like, hey, why don't we list the basement on Airbnb and maybe we can pay for a portion of the mortgage? And honestly, when I felt like all hope was lost and that I wasn't going to be able to achieve the things that I really wanted to achieve, just a light bulb went off. And still, it wasn't easy because we were going through the renovations and dealing with bad contractors. And it was a very big pain. But the payoff, once we did get it listed, was just a game changer. And to be able to just instantly start making like a lot of money right off the bat was just like mind boggling because I had tried all these different things before and had just never seen anything come to fruition. So I know the power of house hacking. I know the power of short-term renting, and that really instilled a fire in me. And it was because I was doing these podcasts and talking with all of you on a daily basis that I just felt like I had to keep going. And even now, as I'm still learning and still growing, it is very challenging to be able to learn all these new things. But every day, it's just one step at a time. And having this community to support and really all of this starting with house hacking, now I understand the power of community and the power of just taking that first step. So house hacking is appealing for many reasons. First, it eliminates your largest expense, which is likely your rent or mortgage. And then second, it allows you to get into real estate without a lot of money. And lastly, it's a great way to build wealth and achieve financial independence. I personally know this. In this episode, I talked to Craig Curelop, author of the book, The House Hacking Strategy, which is actually published through BiggerPockets. And Craig also does work at BiggerPockets. I actually met Craig at first when we were at FinCon in DC, and then I ran into him again at the BiggerPockets event in Nashville, Tennessee. So Craig is a really good friend, and he talks about how he first got into house hacking and soon turned that into a short-term rental, which helped him pay off his student loans and mortgage. House hacking helped Craig achieve financial independence, and now he's able to do the things that he really wants to do. And Craig is really taking the strategy to the next level as he's picking up multiple properties and house hacking them and then basically moving out and doing again. It is such a brilliant thing. Craig is such a smart guy, and you're going to take away so much from this episode. I definitely recommend picking up Craig's book, which you can get on the show notes page. Just go to shorttermsage.com/STR38. Or if you like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week and get the success secrets, which are really awesome, go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back, Host Nation, to another episode of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. In this episode, I have the special honor of speaking with the one, the only, Craig Curelop. Is it Curelop or Curelop?
Yeah. Curelop, you said it right.
Curelop, okay, great.
One of the only. Yeah.
Nice, the one and the only. So Craig, would you please introduce yourself, let the Host Nation know who you are and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals?
Yeah, so my name is Craig. I am kind of known as the house hacking guy. And actually, my first property that I did was kind of a hybrid short-term rental, long-term rental. What I did was I bought a duplex that was an up-down duplex in a really good part of Denver. And I rented out the top full time, lived in the bottom, but that wasn't quite covering my mortgage. So I decided I wanted to do a little bit more than that. And so what I did was I Airbnb'd out my bedroom, put up a quasi bedroom in the living room, which was basically like a room divider and a curtain. And I slept behind a curtain for a year on a futon while Airbnbing out my bedroom and just lived it up for a year, man. Bachelor life.
Oh man, that is the grind right there. But what got you to that point? Because you also have quite a bit of experience with some real estate. You're working at BiggerPockets. You're a house hacker guy. You wrote a book on this, so you obviously have a lot of experience. But take us back to what got you started into real estate, and then what led you to short-term renting.
Yeah, so coming to real estate was back in California. I was in a job that I absolutely hated, and what happened was I was basically on a little mini vacation with my girlfriend at the time down in Big Sur where there's no cell reception. And we had this really wonderful weekend. And when I got back on Sunday night, I got an email from my boss saying that I had to get this memo out by Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, 5 a.m. Pacific. So I basically had to do it that night. And it was the last night that my girlfriend and I were going to spend together before we moved away. So I was really upset and she was really upset. And I was just like, man, I don't want to live my life like this. If this is going to be like a preview for the next 30 or 40 years, there's got to be a better way. So I started reading, started educating myself, thought of a bunch of startup ideas that didn't really work out, obviously. And I just figured about real estate and I was like, man, real estate's tried and true. It works. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just do what works. And so I decided to start doing that. And that's when I moved to Denver. I found BiggerPockets. I was on BiggerPockets. I saw they were hiring. So then I moved, I applied for the job, was lucky enough to get the job, and now moved to Denver and started house hacking out here.
Wow. So I mean, you wrote the book on house hacking. Was that how you initially decided, like, this is how I'm going to get my foot into the game? Like, why didn't you go out and, do what everybody else is doing with like these subject to or the wholesaling and all these different niches within real estate? What brought you to house hacking your first unit and then short-term renting it?
It was mainly because I actually got the job at BiggerPockets, which I thought was just kind of like a dream come true. And if I had not got that job, I probably would be wholesaling or doing subject to or whatever it is where I could basically build up a nest egg so that I could then start house hacking. But because I had the bigger job, BiggerPockets, I said, hey, what the heck? Like, I'll just work at BiggerPockets, gain a bunch of knowledge, be around a bunch of people that do real estate. And obviously I will learn a whole bunch about real estate in the process. And that's how kind of like stumbled upon into it.
And when I think like when I first started house hacking and it was like, okay, I'm just going to rent out another room, or I'm going to have someone going to get a bigger place, maybe rent out a portion. What brought you to listing this property on, or this room on Airbnb?
Well, it was because it was my personal space. Like, it was my bedroom. And so I figured I didn't really want that long term, because in the event that I didn't like it, I'd like to easily be able to cancel it. So that was my first thought. And then I realized that Airbnb wakes way more than a regular rental. And so I was like, oh, whoa, like, I'd probably be able to get $600 or $700 a month for that room any other time. But with Airbnb, I was making on average $1,100 a month, which is a significant difference, especially being your first one. So yeah, and I just thought it'd be cool to meet people from all around the world, meet travelers. I'm a big traveler, so I always like to meet other travelers and kind of just have a revolving door of friends coming in and out.
Now, with renting out, because you rented out just that one room in the unit,
Mhm.
how much was that able to cover for your rent?
I was not paying rent, so yeah, I was profiting like $700 a month and living for free at the time, with between both units.
Oh wow. Okay, so from there, you saw that this is working, and you decided to scale that up. Can you talk a little bit about what led you to start taking on more units?
Yeah, so again, I saw like the profit and stuff and how good it was, and eventually how easy it got once I got my systems in place in terms of having some automatic pricing, automatic messaging, and automatic reviews. So I was very much so out of the day to day. So when I got out of that, I was like, oh, like this is pretty scalable at this point. So I actually ended up converting my top unit to an Airbnb as well. And that started making like even more, I mean, I think last month in August, the duplex, which would typically make about maybe 3 grand, maybe a little over 3 grand in regular rental was making closer to 6 grand just in, in these summer months. In the winter, it's closer to three, but either way, you get that huge boost. So I realized that and said, hey, let's just do the short-term rental.
So, I mean, realizing like how much you're able to get on this return, would you consider going other options in the real estate, or would you kind of double down on the short-term rental aspect and just kind of focus on that?
So I'm actually it's kind of funny. I'm kind of doing I'm kind of like slowing down with speeding up, if that makes any sense. Like I kind of just do what makes sense. Right now, Denver is really cracking down on short-term rentals, especially if you don't live there. So I'm actually working on probably converting at least one of my units to a long-term rental just to play it safe. But that one goes, I just closed on my third house hack, which I will be living in, and it has like basically a separate basement and all that kind of stuff. 3-bed, 1-bath basement with its own kitchen and its own separate entrance. So I'm going to end up converting that into an Airbnb, which I'm excited to. I'm just about to furnish it as we speak. So
Can you talk a little bit about more like your strategy, your mindset when you're going into these units? Because house hacking to me, like my first unit, it was a house hack, and it just seemed like very natural, very easy. But it's also easy to look at that like this is maybe not like a legit business. The way that you've kind of approached this, though, it sounds like you were setting up those systems in place while also living in the home. So what's your mindset with picking up units and also house hacking?
yeah, so I really just try to do what works best. I can't say I go into a property thinking, all right, I put my strategy to the property rather than get my property to the strategy. I think like I saw this house. It had an easy way to convert the basement into a separate entrance bottom unit all to itself. And I'm in a good location, basically right where two highways meet, where I know people are going to want to be. Either they're going to be in Denver, they can go up to Boulder, or they can go out to the mountains pretty easily from my place. So that was kind of the biggest thing that I looked for. But really, it's just kind of what will make the most return.
So with house hacking, if you can kind of explain like what is it that you're looking for when you are picking up a unit that that you are going to try to maybe turn that into a short-term rental to be able to cover your mortgage? What are the things that you're looking for in these units?
If I'm doing like a regular house hack, I just look for the most beds and baths per dollar, and that is how I'll probably get the most amount of money for my mortgage payment, right? The lower the price and the more the bedrooms and bathrooms are, the more profitable it will be. And then what makes me decide whether I want to do a short-term rental or a long-term rental is my default is actually probably long-term rental, just because it's a little bit less work up front and a little bit less furnishing and all that kind of stuff. But with this property, I just saw that, hey, if it's easily can be a short-term rental, I'll do it as a short-term rental, basically extract that additional dollar value while I can, and I can always scale back, right? I can always either rent it out as a furnished rental, sell the furniture to some staging company or someone else, and basically convert it back into a traditional rental and still be okay. So that was kind of my thinking there.
At which point did it become like a legit business that you could start like scaling? Because now you told me that you're spending only about 2 hours a week on managing your short-term rentals, and you've got all these systems in place. You have 3 units or 5 units, but 3 total Airbnbs. When did it start to click like this is a business that I can scale and put those systems into place?
Right when I started implementing software and having computers take over my role, right? With the automatic pricing, I can't remember, it's maybe $20 a month or something. And I mean, it pays for itself typically in one booking at one point because it'll just charge way more than I would charge. So there's that. Then there's automatic messaging, which is super clutch. It's every time someone books, they send a message. 24 hours before check-in, they send a message. 12 hours before checkout, they send a reminder message to check out, because you'd be surprised. I'm sure you're not surprised is how many people forget when their checkout time is, and all of these things. So once I had that set up, I was like, man, there's really nothing else for me to do except answer the one-off questions. And the best part about the software that is automatic messaging is that it can recognize frequently asked questions, and you can set up like canned responses for them. So I do that, and every time I get a question I've never heard of before, I go in, set up a canned response, and then it automatically responds to it. Now, occasionally the software doesn't work 100% of the time, So sometimes I have to go in and send a text message, but it's, maybe once a week that I'm actually texting someone from Airbnb.
So you've written the book on house hacking, and you're really into this. You're picking up more properties, living in them. Why do you think that this is such a strong method for getting into real estate? And then also pairing this with Airbnb, which has such a higher return. Could you kind of talk about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, so with house hacking, it's such a great way to get into real estate because one, it's low down payment, right? The one of the biggest attractive features of house hacking is the fact that you only need 3 to 5% down, right? So you don't need to save 20%. It's 3 to 5%, which you can save in a year or two if you don't already have that saved up. And then I think at first you want to really get the most out of your dollar is kind of how I look at it. It's like when you're starting out, you don't have a huge nest egg. So you need to get the highest possible return to build that nest egg as quickly as possible. So then you can then have that large nest egg. You can scale back, get a lesser return, but still kind of make the same amount of money so that you can do less work, right? So I thought, hey, I want to get the most out of my dollar. I'm going to do the short-term rental. And that was kind of how I did that. And yeah, I mean, you look at the returns in house hacking and you're looking at, I talk about in the book, how much your net worth increases in relation to the down payment you have. I call it the net worth return on investment. And it's always 100% or more after the first year because you put down such little down. And after you factor in all the cash flow you get, the loan pay down, the appreciation on the property, and the tax benefits, you're looking well over 100% most of the time.
Do you think that moving forward, now knowing what you know now with like short-term renting, would you do like traditional long-term house hacking? Because that's typically the mindset when people think of house hacking, like I get a duplex and then I'll rent out one side of the duplex to a long-term renter and then I break even. But now it's like you kind of realize like I can actually make more off of short-term renting. Do you like advise people just moving forward to go that route, or what's your thoughts on that?
So whatever works for you. If you don't mind managing a short-term rental, ultimately you'll be in the hospitality business for a little bit and you have to be able to recognize that. I do recommend that you send the messages yourself for the first few months. You do the cleanings yourself for the first few months. You kind of know your own processes and know you can actually explain to someone what they want to do or tell a computer what you want it to do. So yeah, I mean, totally depends. I really like this strategy using Airbnb for families and people that don't necessarily want to live behind a curtain or live in a room with 5 other roommates, in the house. You can have a house that has a separate entrance basement like I do, or you can get an additional dwelling unit out back and you can kind of live in the house that you want to live in while also renting out some other area that you don't use very much on Airbnb. So that is always the strategy that I like to recommend for families.
And what has been the most challenging part of scaling this short-term rental business?
I guess maybe the hardest thing is just like getting the systems in place and going in and actually setting up the furniture and stuff. And I'm sure I could outsource that if I wanted to, like get a handyman to come in and set it up in a day. But I don't know, I guess the inside of me is still a little bit cheap. So if I can do something, I usually do it. But yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. Sorry, not a good answer, I guess. But yeah, I haven't had too many hiccups with it.
Okay. And what are you doing to be able to set your units apart?
So have you ever heard of Brian Page?
Yes.
He does this like Airbnb. I think his name is Brian Page. Yeah. So I actually took his class and he talks about really scaling and actually building a business, which I was going to do at one point. And he helped me actually basically figure out like how do you set up the listing, right? You want to have really good pictures, right? I paid the $150 for someone to come in and take professional pictures. I try to make the place really bright, lots of lights. I try to do some decorations, all that kind of stuff. I always make sure on almost all my listings, I always say I'm a great responder because my automatic messaging basically messages them right away. And it's so funny when they leave that review because it's like, I literally never said a word to you. So it's great. Yeah. But again, using the price labs, which is the dynamic pricing, that actually helps you set the price right. So people are looking to get the right thing. Another tip that a lot of people use is you actually, for the first few months, you maybe set the price a little bit lower. So then people will say great value and all that stuff in your reviews. So people will think it's a great value even after you've raised the price. So yeah, a bunch of things like that.
And is there anything that you're putting in your units, or because I imagine Denver that there's a lot of people that are short-term renting. What is it that maybe you're doing that helps your units stay fully booked? Because you said that you're occupied around 95%. I mean, that's what's Craig's secret to get 95% occupancy? Are you just going really cheap, or are you doing something that's attracting these people?
I don't think I'm doing anything too special. Again, I think I set the minimum for $40 a night for my one bedroom, and I've got a $55 cleaning fee. So no matter what, I'm getting like $95 a night. And if they just say for one night, and yeah, I mean, it's just booked every time. Like again, I've got good pictures. I've got a really good description. I try to fill out everything I can on Airbnb to make it have a complete profile. I have a nice picture of me in the Airbnb, and I tell in my personal profile, and tell them all about me and my bio. I've got the Superhost badge, so that probably helps. Like over time, you just kind of just continue to fill it out and be able to rank and list your listing, and you get a lot of bookings. Like I feel like I'm booked every time I look. I'm booked, so I can't remember the last vacancy I had, honestly.
So you went into this with the house hacking mindset to own a home, to be able to short term rent it. What are some of the big things that maybe people don't realize with house hacking that you could shed some light on?
So one thing that people may or may not know is that it sounds like really sexy and stuff when you're doing it. When you're doing it, when you're talking about it, and you can talk about your bank accounts, but not many people care about your bank accounts, and they're just going to see that you're living behind a curtain or living in a room or having like renting out a part of your house. So people are going to think you're poor or you're broke, and they're going to ask you why you're doing this and what's the point and all this kind of stuff. And that, especially for the first year, you'll feel that way. But then once you get your second and third one, you'll start having, tens of thousands of dollars more than everybody else. And you'll start picking up properties every year and start really accumulating wealth. And then people will start to realize what you're doing and that, it all makes sense. But you're always going to be different, right? At first you're like the poor guy, and then all of a sudden you become the rich guy. So you have to realize that you have to kind of get used to being different is one thing that, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And for house hacking, does, typically when I think of house hacking, I'm just thinking like duplexes, but are there different ways that you can house hack?
Yeah, so duplex is definitely like the traditional way. I say the way I've been doing it recently is the rent by the room house hack, where you buy out like a 5-bed, 2-bath or 5-bed, 3-bath. You live in one bedroom and you rent out the other 4 bedrooms, such that even on a long-term lease, right? You could do Airbnb or you could do long-term lease. But even now on that long-term lease, right, there's still the rent is covering your mortgage and more, and you're living for free. So it works out great.
Now, with short-term renting, typically a lot of people like to consolidate all their units, put them into like a single home. How is it managing single rooms and getting those filled and turning those over?
Yeah, so I personally have not done the short-term rental by the room, but I do know. I mean, I've stayed in a few, and I do know it does feel like a little bit kind of like a hostel, but I'm sure it's very profitable. You just have to charge a little bit less, right? Because you got people you don't know in and out. That's almost different than having just you and the homeowner, because at least the homeowner is there all the time. She cares about her place and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, I've stayed in both, and usually there's cool people all around. So if you don't mind being social and meeting people, Airbnb is definitely a good way to go.
Okay. And is there anything that you've done in your house rules that has maybe helped save you before? Like, I mean, you've been doing this for a couple of years now. What is the big things that you've learned to implement in your systems that really help save you, especially when you're living in a home? Because it's you're dealing with guests, and you're getting a lot more intimate. Not intimate with them, but you're in a space with them. So what have you been able to do to help separate your personal life and your business?
I guess the biggest thing would probably be, like I say in the house rules, and also in the message, the welcome message, that hey, quiet hours are between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So if you're going to be noisy during that time, this is not the place for you. Just try to really invite non-party people is kind of what I try to do, and just make the laws real strict. A lot of people don't care about the utilities, and they'll crank the AC up in the summer or crank the heat up in the winter. And I say, if I catch the heat over a certain amount, like, we're going to have some problems. Stuff like that has kind of saved me, but yeah.
Do you ever have any issues with the guests that are in your units that, maybe are causing issues or being too loud or inviting too many people? How do you deal with stuff like that?
Very rarely, maybe once a year I've dealt with that, and I would just text them and say, hey, we're getting complaints. Can you guys please just be sure to quiet it down? And usually they're very respectful, and they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, like we didn't even realize, or whatever. whatever BS comment it is, but usually they're very respectful about it because they also want a good review. You know, they want to be able to do Airbnb again, so you have that against them. But yeah, I mean, most people are very reasonable, especially if it's just a few days. And that's the best part about Airbnb is that like it's a few days, so you just have to kind of wait it out a couple of days until they leave.
And have you found a difference from like renting from like house hacking and dealing with guests versus having a unit that or a separate home or separate unit that is dedicated to short-term renting?
Yeah, so when you have guests coming in and out versus tenants, um, guests are way more respectful, right? Because they're not comfortable with you yet. They still want to show you that respect. It's, 3 to 5 days. You're not going to destroy someone's house in 3 to 5 days. However, after you live with someone for a year and more of a longer term stay, then you're saying you get comfortable, you kind of become friendly, you become friends with them, they get more comfortable, they start living more of a mess, they start inviting people over. It can kind of escalate quickly. So if you do decide to do the long term rental type thing, you would just have to make sure that you lay the rules, and when things start to kind of go south, you stop it quick.
Mm. And what would you do differently if you had to start from scratch?
I honestly would probably not buy the duplex on my first one. I'd probably try to get a single family and do that rent by the room because I just think it does work a little bit better. But with that being said, this duplex is definitely going to be my highest appreciating asset. And yeah, I think it'll be a good play either way.
And why do you feel that a single family home is a better move than going duplex?
It just cash flows a little bit better for one. Two, it's cheaper, so it cash flows better that way as well. And they're a little bit more liquid, right? You got more people looking for single family homes than they do duplexes. So I think my duplex might be slightly harder to sell than a typical single family home would.
So you're looking at this more from the exit strategy. If you are going to be selling something,
Right.
a single family is going to be easier to sell than a duplex.
That's right.
Okay. And if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's trying to get started into real estate, and maybe getting into short-term rentals, what would that be?
It would be just to get started and learn before you get started. But once you're done learning, don't be afraid to get started because you hit this threshold where you can only listen to so many podcasts and read so many blogs and read so many books that you're actually not really learning anything anymore. And you just have to like learn through experience. And the quicker you can kind of realize and get to that, the better off you'll be. Because once you get your first house hack, that timer starts for when you can start getting your next house hack, right? So I always people always ask me if there's any like negotiation tactics and stuff I use when I buy a house. And I say, no, like I usually just ask for asking price because I'd rather just get into a house than save $10,000, which since this is a buy and hold, it's like maybe $20 a month. It's just not worth it. I'd rather get into a house, start getting the rent sooner so I can go get the next property even sooner.
Why do you think that house hacking is so appealing to everybody, and why do you think so many people they hesitate into getting into real estate in the first place?
Well, I think it's really appealing for many reasons. One, it eliminates your largest expense, which is likely rent or your mortgage. Two, it allows you to get into real estate. So it just is that great kind of transition into real estate. Three, it is a phenomenal way to build wealth with not a lot of money down, right? You don't need a lot of money. And for that reason, you just get such high returns of 100% or more after that first year. And it's absurd. Like I just don't know any other investment vehicle, even in real estate or outside of real estate, where you can consistently get 100% plus return without, throwing money at Bitcoin. It's something super risky that's essentially gambling. So.
And when you're analyzing a property, are you looking at it from a different perspective now that you have experience with short-term renting, or are you looking at this like a traditional real estate investment?
I kind of go into it looking at it as if it would be a traditional real estate investment. I don't like to assume that it will be short-term rental forever because with all the regulations and everything that's going in with short-term rentals, you have to be careful to make sure that it also works as a traditional rental because I don't think those are going anywhere. So you just have to be careful. And yeah, so I go into it thinking, okay, this is going to be a traditional rental. And if I can get a little more out of it from the short term, I will.
Are you analyzing how much you could potentially be making as a short-term rental as well when you're going into these properties?
No, to be honest, I actually just calculate it as if it will be a long-term rental, make sure it's a good long-term rental. because anything from the short term rental is just gravy the way I look at it. And where I'm buying, it's like Denver Metro. So I know that there will pretty much always be some demand for Airbnb. And at any point, if Airbnb shuts down, I know that I can shut down my Airbnb and I can turn it into a traditional rental and it will still work. So you have to make sure it works both ways. So you don't lose your shirt.
Now, you said education is a really big part and that people spend a lot of time, even this podcast, I'm sure that there's plenty of people that are just listening to this show without maybe taking the action. And being a part of BiggerPockets, you're exposed to a lot of real estate, a lot of people that are all about this. What is maybe some of the big, I'm just curious, what are some of the big things that you've taken away working at BiggerPockets and being in that environment?
It's just being around everybody, right? Everyone's doing deals. Not everyone's doing deals, but I'd say about a third of the company, which is significant, like 10 to 12 people, are consistently buying real estate. And so when you see everybody consistently buying real estate and talking about real estate and learning about it, it's just like, okay, why am I not doing this? Like everyone else is doing it kind of thing. So it definitely helps to be surrounded by people that are also doing it. So I definitely had that going for me. And if you don't have that going for you and you're, stuck with a bunch of rats in the rat race, I highly recommend joining some real estate groups. Find a BiggerPockets meetup in your area and join that. If there's not one, create one, and you'll be good to go.
And now, are you, because you're coming into this and you have this, this house hacking, short-term rental kind of perspective, is what's the, being in this space where there are so many people that are doing real estate, what is the general kind of thought and the general feeling towards short-term renting at this time within the BiggerPockets community?
We have a few people here that do short-term rental. I can think of, you count me, 4 at the top of my head that are doing short-term rental at BiggerPockets, and they love it. I mean, one guy's got a house up in the mountains, and that does magnificently. Another woman here rents out her like a studio basement, and she pretty much covers her mortgage with that. This other guy has just bought a house and is just converting his to an Airbnb. I'm doing Airbnb and I'm converting mine to an Airbnb. So yeah, I mean, the general consensus is it works. It's really profitable, but if we did have to switch it, we could still switch it and still be profitable and still be able to hold on.
So it sounds, from what you're saying, is that the big thing is that you can't go into this deal with the sole intent to short-term rent it. You have to go in there with a different, a more traditional, more conservative mindset.
That's right.
Okay. And you're with a lot of people that are asking a lot of good questions, but what would be a question that maybe you would ask another professional host, maybe someone that is at a similar level or maybe that next level from where you're trying to be? If you could ask them anything, what would that be?
Probably, how do you find and manage good contractors, which is very hard, but someone who has systems and stuff probably does that. And I don't think there's like a right answer to do it. I think it's just a matter of getting as many contractors in your funnel and just assessing them that way and just trial and error kind of stuff and recommendations. But yeah, I just had a lot of problems with contractors in the past.
And that's with the rehab work that you're doing?
Yeah.
Do you think that there is maybe just like an ease, like what if you could kind of give like what's the most easiest way for someone to get into, because lots of people maybe they're getting into this and they think like, oh, I want to find a property, I want to rehab it, I'm going to own it, then I'm going to short-term rent it. If you could give like, do you have an idea in your mind of like the easiest way of getting into real estate, being profitable and turning it into a scalable business without like the most amount of friction?
Yeah, I think if you want like the least amount of work, with less work likely comes less money. So the first deal I did was that duplex that needed absolutely no work. It was just a complete move-in ready, and I was still making good money off of it. So yeah, just find a move-in ready place, especially if you want to if you're going to do the short-term rental strategy, find a place that already has the basement done, right? Find a place that already has it. You'll pay a little bit more for it, but you can just move in and get started right away. And I'd almost recommend that for the first one because there's just such a learning curve for that first one that, my first one was, I've done incrementally larger rehabs on each property so far. So
baby steps.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you have a, besides your book, Craig, do you have a favorite book that you can recommend that has really kind of maybe changed your business or your life?
Favorite book? This is always such a tough question. I feel like I always want to give a different one every time I answer it. But, There's always the ones that you hear, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of changed my mindset. The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss is the one that actually got me thinking about passive income. Brandon Turner's rental property book, the book on rental property investing. I read that before I ever came to BiggerPockets. It was the first real estate book I ever read, and that got me hooked into real estate. And I just dove down the rabbit hole from there.
Awesome, yeah, and we'll include those book links in the description as well. And just to kind of wrap this up, what is a new question that I'm going to start asking is, what has short-term renting allowed you to do in your life? Like how has short-term renting and house hacking really kind of changed your life? And then moving forward, where do you see that?
So it's allowed me to just really have a way more comfortable financial position, right? Like I've done a whole lot of traveling in the past year. I went to Greece. I've been to Southeast Asia. I've traveled all around the US just in the past year. And so it's allowed me to do that, which are the things that I love to do. It's also given me a lot of comfort around, okay, if my job is in jeopardy, I'm not super scared, right? I don't have to do things that I hate to do. I can last for a very long time without a job, basically forever, because now I think I'm actually technically financially independent now. So yeah, it just allows you to have way more confidence and way more ability to kind of take those chances in life.
Do you think that you would have been able to get to where you are as quickly had you not been short-term renting?
Short-term renting definitely helped out, right? And I even did we didn't talk about this in the show at all yet, but I also did the whole Airbnb arbitrage thing where I rented my buddy's place from him and put it on Airbnb and kept the difference. And that alone, we only did that for a year because we ended up getting caught by the HOA and just shut it down before we had any ramifications. But we did it for a year, and I was able to pay like $10,000-$15,000 off my student loans. And I had $85,000 of student loans like 18 months ago, and they were paid off entirely in this April 2019. So like 6 months before this recording, I paid them all off. So yeah, I mean, it felt good.
And that was all because of using rental arbitrage?
Not all, not the 15,000 was rental arbitrage, but that was a huge, that's more than 10% of that 90,000 or the 85,000 that I had. So that played a huge factor. That along with I was putting some of the money from my rentals into paying down my student loans, all my other savings and some side hustles and stuff I did also. So yeah, it all helped. It all helped.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And moving forward in the future, with your experience being, in real estate, being part of this the community, where do you see moving forward and how you're going to be incorporating short-term rentals?
I think I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing and kind of picking up properties as they go, and basically analyzing them as long-term rentals and seeing if I can do a short-term rental. I likely will, at least at first, just because you get that high return at first. And yeah, just kind of go from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Craig. Very, very short, very action packed in this episode. Lots of stuff that we did cover, but you just got the answers right there. So, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And of course, I'm going to include all the books and everything in the description below. Craig wrote the book on house hacking, so if you want to get into house hacking, definitely check it out. Really good read, good listen. You can get it on audio as well. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy that once the audio version comes out. Listening to that. Because I don't sit down to read books anymore. I just listen to everything. But so much good stuff. What would you say would be kind of the big things that for a person that it would be purchasing this book? What would they be able to take away from this?
This book has everything I know about house hacking in like 250 pages or whatever. So you would get the whole gamut, right? It's how house hacking can help you achieve financial independence. It'll go from how do you find a property, how do you analyze the property, how do you list it as a short-term rental? How do you list it as a long-term rental? How do you manage tenants if you are doing the long-term rental? It's got case studies of like 13 or 14 different people at the end of each chapter that tell you basically tell you the story of what they did to house hack and why they are house hacking. And it just shows you that you can do it from so many different angles and have so many different strategies, and it works out almost in any case. You just have to kind of start taking action and doing it.
Yeah, and this is a legit book, guys. This is coming published through BiggerPockets, and that's kind of one of the benefits that I guess you kind of have, Craig, is you're part of the community, you're working in it, and you're house hacking. You're like, hey, let me write the book on this, and they just let you.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that easy, but Yeah, I mean, I had to, you had to pitch it. I had to write it outline. I had to do all they don't treat me any differently than they would any other author, but I guess they may take it, I guess they take it easier, but they don't like review. If someone else came in with a better offer, they wouldn't take mine because it's mine. It's because,
It's because you're
yeah,
providing the quality, and that's in the works. So
right.
that's awesome. Well, yeah, looking forward to listening to that book when that does come out. That's coming out by the time that this episode is out. It should already be out. So that is so cool. So thank you so much, Craig, again, and until next time, Host Nation, keep on hosting. Hope you hosts benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to hosts that have been featured in these episodes as well as the community, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation.